So hi, my name's Teresa, I'm the owner of New Forest Sewing Studio. So we do a monthly make, and this month we're going to make the Grainline Studio Alder shirt dress. So we're going to make it out of a viscose linen, which is a nice drapey fabric, ideal for this project that we sell here at New Forest Sewing Studio. So it's a nice fabric with a bit of texture on the fabric too, so that's good. Right, so I've cut out all my pieces, I've marked my notches and my tailor's tacks for bust darts and pockets. I've interfaced the right front and the left front, and also, what else have I done? Interfaced one of the collar pieces and one of the collar stands, so they're already sort of as we go along later on. I prefer to sort of interface at the start all in one go, and then work from there. So the left front, it wants us to pin this in place. Let me unfold a piece. So the left front, we've interfaced along there an inch away from the edge, and then we fold back an inch and then fold that back again, press, and then we're going to stitch down here, I believe. So fold again the second set of notches. Yeah, so you just fold again on the second set of notches, give it a good press, and then stitch close to the inside seam. So I'm just going to stitch this down along there. Okay, and then it doesn't say to stitch twice, but it does show it on the instructions. So I'm going to sew along here, this edge, and then also along that edge, as it's shown in the instructions, because it does then ask you to do the same with the right front. So I just want them to be matching, so I will do that. So that's for the left front, and then for the right front, it wants you to pin your interfaced button band, the interfaced edge, along the edge of the your front piece, your front centre hem, centrepiece hem. So I'm going to stitch that in place there. Can't remember my seam allowances now. All seam allowances are 1/2 inch, with the exception of the pockets, armholes and arm binding, which are 1/4 inch. Okay, so it's a 1/2 inch seam allowance down here, and then we're going to stitch this as well. So I'll do that and then I'll come back. Okay, so I've angled it down a little bit so you can see a bit better actually. So we've stitched down both sides of there. Let me just bring it a bit nearer so you can see. So that's the reverse. Okay, and that's on the right side. Okay, so I've stitched down both sides, down there, and then just down the inside there. And then on this one, we've trimmed and graded the seam allowance. So I've stitched together down the centre, stitched the face at the front band to the dress, and then I've graded the interfaced edge of there. Pressed it towards the centre front, so towards the face, towards the facing band, front band, and then you've got to fold it and fold it again, so you're effectively sealing it in like that. Okay, and then again it's going to ask you to stitch down just pin that back in. So it's going to ask you to stitch down the front piece here, so along the edge there, and also down the centre front as you have for the other piece. So I'm going to do those, and then it's doing the darts and the pockets. So I'll just stitch these and then I'll come back. Okay, so we've stitched down the other, done two.
Okay, media will play more softly.
It's my phone talking to me. So we've just stitched down both sides of there, and next we need to do the darts. So we're going to pinch out the darts and pin those in place. So I've done that one. I'll show you how I do the other one. my fabric looks very similar both sides. So I have put a pin in the right side of my fabric because it's really got to sort of look at it to see the difference. So there's the bust dart tailor's tack that we want. So we'll pin that there. And then we'll find the two, mark the notches of the dart leg. So I always put notches in the dart leg. So we mark a tailor's tack at the point of the dart for the right size, point of the dart here for the right size, and then according to your size, whichever, I just put a couple of notches in the edge there that we can then line up. So where was I? So 2 notches in the side seams there. I'll join those up, pin that in place, and then just lay it flat, nice and flat, and then pin along there, and then with a ruler and a marker, so you could use a heat erasable pen, but that won't show up on the dark fabric, so I'm just going to use a chalk pen. You can use a tailor's chalk, anything, or a chalk pen is often easier to just get a bit of a finer line, and just draw that in like so. Let's see if I've drawn that on there. Okay, so I'm just going to stitch those darts in place. So we back stitch here to secure your stitching at the legs of the dart, what we call the legs of the dart on the outer, on the seam, and sew towards there, and then I just sew off the end and then tie off the stitches. Ideally don't back stitch there because it'll make your darts a bit pointy. Sorry about my shirt. Right, okay, so I'm going to do that and then I'll be back. Okay, so that's the dart sewn in place here. Okay, that's the dart sewn in place, and press the dart down. So when you sew off the when you just sew off the end of the dart, just tying off the dart end, you just literally need to just knot it a few times, and then just snip the ends off just like so, and then press the dart end down towards the hem. Okay, and then next we're going to do the pockets. So sewn it on that one already. I'll show you this one. So it wants you to press the top ends like so over, and then press that end down, and then it wants you to stitch along there, stitch that in place along there and up there, and then press your edges in like so all the way around. And then when we've done that, we need to position it onto our dress front. So then this is what your little tailor's tacks are for there, just to position that all in place once you've pressed it in, and then stitch round. It wants you to do a little triangle at the top of the pocket here, just so that it reinforces it. So I've done this one. It's very difficult to show. I must do a lighter fabric next time. Just on the top there. So that's that stitched in place. So I'm going to do the same with the other one. And then I'm presuming we do the back piece with the yoke. And it doesn't tell you to do the burrito method on this one, but I might be able to with my fabric. Depends if it's too bulky. Might just be that there's too much to roll up into it, but it would be nice to do it if we can. So we'll have a look at that. Okay, so that's the other pocket sewn on. So now we're going to do our back piece and join the yokes. So we get the back piece right side up, and then we want one of our yoke pieces, which is one of these. We'll have 2 of these. We just want 1 of these at the moment, and we want to place it right sides together along the top there, like so. Find what I've done with my pins. Oh, over there. So we'll just pin that in place. It's worth marking the when you cut a piece on the fold that's going to join together like this, so it's before you, it's worth just marking your centre pieces where you've just snip into the ends of your, very slightly into the ends of your centre pieces, like a little notch, just so that then it's easier to line up. So I've lined the centre notch. I've done the same on the back piece as well as on the yoke. So we're just going to join those together there. And get that pin up there. So always pin in the centre and pin on the outer edge, and then you can check it all lies flat and pin in between. So one of the yolks, cut and choose. Doesn't matter till you can base the yoke to the dress back with the right side's facing. Yeah, so we're just going to base that in place, and then we're going to position the yoke onto the wrong side as well. So I'll just go and base that in place, and then I'll come back and show you the other piece. Okay, so we've basted this in place across there, basted the yoke right sides together onto that one, and then onto the other side of your back piece of the dress, you're going to, I've got to figure out which side is which, yeah, that side. You want to put the right side of the yoke, of your yoke piece, onto the wrong side of your fabric. So again, lining up your centre notch there. And there. A couple more in to keep that all in place. Put it on the other corner. Yeah. And there. Okay, so then we're going to stitch so basically you've got your back piece sandwiched in between your two yoke pieces. Okay, so we're going to stitch that along 1/2 inch seam allowance with a normal stitch this time, and then if there's any stitches showing of the basting threads, we can remove those. Okay, so then we just need to press both of them up and away from the dress fabric, and then top stitch along. So I'll do that, and then we'll talk about positioning the front shoulder seams. So we've sewn that and top stitched it. Okay, so you've got your seam sandwiched between the two yokes, okay, and then pressed up, and then we've top stitched along there. And next we're going to join, actually I'm just looking to see if I'm joining it to the right one. No, I don't think I am. No, right. So then we're going to join it at the shoulder seams. Join it to the wrong yoke. So we want to join it to the right side of the shoulder seams. So just move that out of the way. So right sides together. We'll just join our shoulder seams at the top here. Just get that pinned in place and I'll show you. So we want to join right sides together, so you've got your right side of your back piece and the right side with your pocket on of your front piece, and we're just joining it together there at the shoulder seams. Oh, I've still got it on the wrong side. Oh, I've got the armhole in the middle. Right, this side goes on there. That one on there. Got the button band down the middle, not down the side. There we go. So right sides together. Let me lay it flat and then it'll be easier for you to see, easier for me to see for that matter. Right, so there you go. So we want right sides together. So you've got your back, right side of your back there, and then we want the right side of the front. So pocket, with the pocket on, obviously the right side of your front facing down towards onto your back piece, and we're just going to join it together there at the shoulder seams. So 1/2 inch seam allowance as before. Okay, so 1/2 inch seam allowance as before. Now I'm wondering if I can. No. So I was wondering before whether I was going to be able to roll this up as a burrito method, roll this all up and get that all along with this bit into the yoke, and then stitch the sleeves, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I think it's just too much fabric. I'll have a go in a minute, because then it can, you know, it does do the seams nice, but I'll sew these first. I will use a normal stitch, and then I'll see if I can do the burrito method and show you. Okay, so it will all fit in. So I'll show you the burrito method. So if you lay your pattern piece out, so you've got your right side up, okay, with this yoke piece there stitched down that way. So then if you just roll your as sort of small as you can, piece up that way, your back piece up that way, and then just roll up your front pieces much the same into the middle there, and then the same again that side. Okay, and then you've got your seam here, you've just sewn your shoulder seam, and you're going to bring that shoulder seam over to there, so you're going to case all that inside there. So we're going to pin that in place. Like so. Okay, and we'll do the same with this one. Wherever it's gone, there it is. So join the shoulder seam of that yoke with the bit you've just sewn together. Okay, now I'm going to make sure you keep everything inside out the way, and then I'm going to stitch along where I've pinned here. So it basically looks like that with everything rolled up inside. I'm going to stitch along there and stitch along there, shoulder seams again on top of the previous seam that we've done, and then we're going to turn it all in the right way. Okay, I'll show you as we turn it out how that works. Okay, so that's those two seams sewn, okay, sewn along there. So then you literally just turn it out through the neck. So you just pull your pieces through like that, and again like that. Okay, so then your seam, that's the wrong side and that's the right side. So now it just wants us to press that and then top stitch along those seams, and that's the burrito method. So it's all sort of encased. So even if you're not top stitching, you've got all your seams encased within the yoke, so that's quite a nice way of doing a yoke piece. So I'll go and top stitch those, and then I expect it is the side seams. Oh no, it's the collar next, so then we'll go on to the collar next. Okay. Okay, so we've based that in place along there. A little bit of trimming, but I think that'll press out when the collar gets stretched around. Yeah, that'll be fine. So we've basted along there. Okay, so now we're going to put the uninterfaced side of your collar stand onto the other side of your collar. So basically you're sandwiching your collar in between. So just match up the notches on your collar stands at the edges. Pin that in place. Pin one there. Pin that in place there. Pin that in place. Match up the notches part way along here. Match up the notch there. Pins in. We've got several layers now. Oops. All the pins. Let's get my hair cut. It's driving me mad, getting in my eyes. Right, okay. So now we're going to stitch half an inch seam allowance, I think the same. I'll just sew the right sides together. Yeah, half an inch. So we're going to sew a half-inch seam allowance all the way around there, right round to the end. So right round the curved edge, from here all the way around, and then round down to there. Okay, and then we're going to grade the seam allowance, just notch it at the curved edges, which I can show you in a minute actually, and then we turn it right side out and give it a press. So we'll do that next, and possibly position it on the dress, although that might have to be tomorrow. Right. Okay, so we've stitched that all around in place. So we just need to grade your seam allowance. So that's just trimming down one seam less than the other. So we're just going to trim along there. Take off some of that interface side so it's not quite so thick and bulky. Sorry, I'm not talking because I'm concentrating. So get over that seam bit there, over the centre seam. Okay. So just trimming away. Usually if you pick the interface side, that's usually the thickest and bulkiest side. Trim it around like that. So you've just taken some of the, so that it doesn't all sit bulky in one area. I could probably take a bit more of that one actually, just on that corner there. Particularly on the corner there. It's quite bulky there. There we go. I went off a bit there. Let's just trim a bit more off there. Wasn't very straight there. There we go. That's a bit better. Right. Get rid of all those ends. So the next thing we're going to do is just to clip into the corners. So So just on the corners here, we just need to clip so that they'll sit nicely when we turn it out. So just snip those. Do the same on this side. So just where you've got a curve, just snipping just up to your seam allowance, just like so. We've got that where it joins there. Okay, so just little snips in there, put the ends out. Okay. Okay, and then we can turn it out to the right side, and then we just need to give that a press. I don't think you can see my iron there. No. Okay. So I'm just going to give that a press. So just press it. Sorry you can't see me, I've gone out of shot now. Just press it with your iron. I'll try and be as quick as I can. Press it both sides. Just to make sure that's well pressed down towards the and just point any bits out with a point turner. I'll show you in a minute as you need to. So that's it all pressed out like so. Okay, if you need to, just point out any edges with the point turner there. Okay, so then the next step will be attaching it to the neck of the dress, but we'll do that tomorrow now as it's getting later this evening now. So yeah, so I'll probably do that tomorrow evening, or Friday's busy, so probably tomorrow evening or Saturday. Okay, so sort that shortly. See you then. Okay, so we're gonna continue. It's now Monday, so it did take me a few days to get back to it, but it's been a busy weekend. So we're now going to stitch, just how I've pinned that. That's better. Okay, so now we're going to attach the collar to the neck edge of the dress. So you've got to just mark, align your notches along the neck edge. They're quite well notched. You've got a double notch that side, single notch that side, and then the end of your collar stand will end at your neck edge there. Okay, so I'm gonna stitch that in place, and then we need to turn around and sew in these the ends of the collar stand next. So I'll stitch that in place first. So we've sewn the collar stand to the collar, and then snipped into the edges up to the stitching just so that it can curve nicely, and then we're pinning over the end of the, very difficult to show, the end of the collar stand here, like that. So basically that's how it is at the moment. Okay, that's how it is at the moment, open like that. So we need to turn it, tuck the collar away inside, fold that back round like so. So you've folded it by that edge there, and then it wants you to just stitch sort of 1.5 to 2 inches along. So you just need to make sure that you've got your collar out of the way inside. Okay, so all your collar and everything's all stuck up inside there. You need to make sure that that is well pushed out the way so that you don't catch that in as you stitch it. Okay, so it wants us just to stitch about 1.5 to 2 inches along there, and then we'll turn it out, and then we'll do the rest of the collar. Yeah, which it wants us just to slip stitch in place by hand and then top stitch around the rest of the collar. So we'll do this bit first and then I'll show you the next bit. So we've stitched them round like that. So it is quite bulky, quite difficult to do, but it is doable. And then it just wants you to pull this through quite tight, but it should come through, she says, hoping. So I've caught the stitching in, of course. The other side worked. I've caught a bit of stitching in there. It's quite fiddly to do. Okay. So then that's turned out like that. Okay. Oh, and I have caught it in. I've caught it in all over the place. That one turned out fine. It's a bit funny at the end. So that one's fine, but this one I have caught the underneath in it. So I'm going to have to unpick that and redo that. So I'll do that now. So I've done the ends, turned that through. Okay, and got rid of all my caught in stitches, and then we're just gonna, I've just turned that over, and then you just press your seam allowance up towards the collar, and then press under the collar piece that we've just sewn, and then we're just going to slip stitch by hand all the way along the bottom there, and then it wants you just to top stitch all around the collar stand. Okay, so I'm going to grab a cup of coffee while I hand stitch this, slip stitch this in place, and top stitch that, and then we'll be back to do the binding for the arm side, for the armhole piece. And then I think it's buttonholes and a hem. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a coffee while I sew this, and then I'll be back and we'll do the binding the armholes. So that's the collar top stitched in. You can see it very well, the dark colour. That's all top stitched in place. Then I didn't do my side seams before doing the collar because I think it's I find it easier just to lay the collar flat sometimes to do that. So I've just got to do my side seams. So I've pinned those in place, ready to sew those. And then the other bit we need to do is the binding for the arm side, for the armhole. So oops, loose pin there. So it wants you just to create with your two ends of your armhole bias strip, right sides together, and so a 1/4 inch seam allowance to create a circular strip. So I'll just unpin that and show you that. Put that there, I've got the window open so it don't blow away. Right. So right sides together, which is this side. So right sides together, just join those two small ends, and it's going to want you to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance along that top edge there. Okay, so we'll do the same for that one. Along that top edge there. Okay, so I'm just going to sew those and my side seams, and then we're going to press that seam open on the binding, and then we can fit it around the arm side. Okay. so that's the side seams all sewn up. So from the right side, and my binding I've sewn into a quarter inch seam allowance there on the short end, so just creating a circle. So then it wants you to pin it to the right side of the arm size. So I'll show you what we do. So if you get the edge where you've your seam of the binding, align that with the underarm seam there, put a pin there. Okay, and then I tend to just sort of give it a little wiggle just to see that you've got it sitting fairly sort of straight all the way around. Then you can put a pin on the other end at the like at the shoulder piece, and then do your next quarters. So then pin it so you're roughly in the middle here, halfway up the front armhole, pin it there, and then just pin it in between so it's evenly distributed. Make sure we get both those edges together. So let's pin that there. It's quite a good idea to put quite a few pins in just to keep it where you want it really. So again in the middle. It's a lovely English summer's day here. So in the UK, if you're watching outside the UK, if you're in the UK, it's probably much the same and raining where you are as well. So good for the plants, but not good if you want to get out for the day. Right, so next for the other side, again we just find the middle, somewhere in the middle, align that piece first, in the centre of that section. Quite a few pins just to make sure it's all sitting quite straight. If your fabric's not quite so floppy as mine, you might not need so many pins, but this being a viscose linen, because the viscose content is quite drapey, so I just need to get a few pins in to make sure it stays where I want it really. Okay, and then we're going to stitch around those, stitch that in place around there with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then it says to grade the binding edge down to 1/8 of an inch, but I'm going to see how that is with my fabric, because it has got a little bit of a tendency to fray, not overly but a little bit, so I'm going to see how that is first when I've pressed it. And then go from there. So we'll sew that bit first, and then we'll sew. Then want you to trim it, clip the curves, press the binding over towards the seam, and then like over stitch. So we'll do that next, but we'll sew these in first. Okay. Okay, so we've stitched the binding on around the edge there, and I have clipped into the seam allowance, and I did trim down just along there. Did trim down the seam allowance of the binding. Just going to press that bit flat because that's not quite flat. So then I'm going to, next we have to understitch. I think I said overstitch last time. Anyway, understitch just as close as we can to this edge all the way around there. So you're stitching the binding to the seam allowance that you've just pressed under. Okay, so we're going to stitch all around there and then fold it in and make the binding. Okay, so now we need to, we've understitched, let me show you on this one, we've understitched all the way along there, you see that, okay, around the arm side there. So next we need to press it all over to the wrong side like that, okay, so that's the right side, and then that will be the wrong side, okay, and press it over like that to the wrong side, and then press under 1/4 inch so it's like that, okay, and then pin it all in place, which I've done on this one. So pin it all around like that, okay, so and then we're going to, and then to stitch around the edge, this edge of the inner edge, this edge, the folded edge here of the binding, okay, stitch all the way around, and then the hem, you just turn up 1/4 inch and then turn over again 1/4 inch, and I've just pressed and pinned that all in place. So then we're going to stitch around that as well. It's just a narrow hem because of the curve, so it, you know, just so that because of the sort of like shirt tail curve on it. So I'll stitch those, show you what I've done there, and then we're going to do the buttonholes. So we'll mark out where the buttonholes go. Okay. So now we've done the sleeves, done around both the sleeves, and now we've just got to mark where the button holes are going to go on your right front. So I've just laid the pattern piece along. I don't tend to mark mine, I tend to do them once I've got it all in place. So you just need to consider your seam allowance at the top there, and then place them along. So I'm going to see how that is. I've marked where they are, so then I just take it off, the pattern piece off like that. And that one. So I'm just going to try that on and see whether they're definitely where I want them, and if I need to adjust them, and then respace them out, and then sew my buttonholes in. Obviously I've got them all at different levels, so I need to make sure they're all in the centre of the button placket there. As I say, these are all over to the edge at the moment, so I just need to make sure that they're all centred in the middle, and then they're where they want to be, and then I'll sew those in place, and then we'll pop the buttons on.